I know. And I have twins, so I can really see it,
Yeah.
in two totally different humans that, you know, born 10 minutes apart, boy and girl, developing at totally different rates, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, it's understood that girls develop faster than boys, females faster than boys, males, sorry.
Yeah.
And the, I can see it. Like she spoke 3 or 4 months before he did, like
Hmm.
talking, with words. She potty trained herself without thinking about it. He was like 3 years of craziness. um, and so on and so on. So you see these differences even between male and female as they're growing up, but the tendencies, the perception that they have,
Hmm.
it's loud. Like it's not hard to find the differences between the two of them. They're very different. I know that in certain circumstances, I'll literally run up to the two kids, same exact situation. Something just happened, and I'll run up and I'll pick up Zion and go, "Oh, buddy, but blah blah." Because I know Taya she's not even paying attention, doesn't care, didn't phase her, wasn't a big deal, nothing. Or vice versa. It's not just one of the. It
Right.
changes depending on the circumstances, because I know they're wired a certain way.
Welcome to Self-Helpful. I'm your guide, Kevin Miller, and I curate the sea of new personal development messages to bring the most influential leaders onto this show. Join me as I question my guests to better understand their counsel so we can all integrate the wisdom into our lives, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. The Self-Helpful podcast is presented by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping coaches. Visit Ziglar.com. Hello, Self-Helpful listeners. In this episode, Know Thyself, how to wield your nature and not let it own you. We've been looking at the idea of an inherent perception style, meaning that you have a hardwired perception style. You will naturally experience life a certain way. The expert I brought in to discuss this is Lynda-Ross Vega. Lynda-Ross spent her life in the high-end business world and partnered with clinical psychologist Gary Jordan to research and create the perception style theory to help individuals identify their strengths, appreciate human differences, and navigate challenges. Their book, and my muse here, is Unlock the Power of Your Perception. I discussed the concept with Lynda-Ross in the previous episode. Here I bring my brother, Jared Angaza, in to discuss this further. We accept the concept of an inherent perception style. Jared actually has twins and testifies to them having a different perception style right out of the womb. However, we agree on the ability to understand our inherent perception style, not judge it as right or wrong, and wield it according to what will serve ourselves and others and the situation best. You can listen in to see if you agree and are game to understand and leverage your perception style. You can take a free perception style assessment at yourtalentadvantage.com. Folks, you can see this and all episodes completely on YouTube if you'd like. Just search for Self-Helpful with Kevin Miller. Well, brother, what intrigued me with this message was the concept, and we all know, objective reality happens and people experience it differently. But it was, Lynda-Ross and her co-author and their studies on, we have an inherent, that's the word she used, inherent perception style. So if I understand that about you, like a personality style, so Jared has this perception style, and it is not, now again, let's play with her premise. It is not going to change. For right now, I'm just going to go with that. Okay. That's what their studies show, that it's not going to change, but that's helpful to understand my perception style, that I'm going to experience everything through it kind of, like, oh, so-and-so sees things through rose colored lenses and so-and-so sees things through crap colored glasses. But she's saying that's legit. And that's why I was intrigued by the book and the studies, going, dang, that puts more gravity to it, maybe to understand ourselves and each other. Go, no, I authentically, naturally, inherently, whatever, I'm going to perceive things this way. Maybe again, inherently or programmed. We can play with that, obviously, because one of the things I asked her that we didn't really go down the path of fully was, yeah, but aren't we also all built for self-protection? So I'm going to tend to see things in a way that also protects me. Actually play with that, if you will, because we didn't really do that justice, I don't think, in the talk with her.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has become more apparent to me, and I'm more tuned into it as a parent. It's funny, I hadn't planned that, but as a parent, it is clearer to me because I see my kids, and I see, oh wow, Zion is definitely programmed like this. I didn't do that. I didn't have anything to do with that. I mean,
Yeah.
other than genetically, maybe. But in terms of nurture, nature versus nurture, Darwin discussion, he came in with those plans, and that perspective, perception, and so on. And I think that there's it's why we do these personality tests all the time, right? There's all kinds of them. You and I have probably done a whole stack of 20 or so. Those, I think, are trying to tap into what is the inherent blueprint within you. And so that people, it's almost like a warning shot. It's like, hey, this is what, just so you know, I'm a D on the disc, thing or whatever.
Right.
Or I'm this on Enneagram or whatever. Like in my group of friends, in our community here, everybody just introduces themselves with their Enneagram discussion. It's like, I'm an 8. And they're like, oh, got it. So that it's just like a way of knowing each other. And and I think what we're doing is we're saying, hey, here's my innate perception style. And when we distinguish a little bit, and I'm just claiming my own thoughts, but I would distinguish a little bit in my own world between perspective and perception. It's nuanced, but I see my perspective is something that is both innate and environmentally influenced,
right,
by the environment around me. So I have a perspective, which is a way of seeing. It's the way, or sorry, I should say it's a way of believing. It's the things that I believe, the things that are innately in me, the things that are genetically in me, that I'm predisposed to. There are things that I am, there's all of that. Plus, there's the environmental influences from all around me. You have one kid that grows up in one neighborhood, one kid grows up in another neighborhood, different experiences, different races, different experiences, different genders, different experiences. There's all these different layers that give us different experiences. And when you combine that with what you came in with, if you will, genetically and so on, I feel like that constitutes our perspective, meaning the way we believe the world is, and then we respond accordingly. Our perception of the world, I think, is how we see everything according to that perspective, according to those beliefs. So our perspective can be somewhat malleable, and I mean that more in the evolution sense. And I think that's part of I don't know. I think that's part of what she was saying, Lynda-Ross, in the book, is that she recognizes that our perception is going to be evolving a bit. It's going to be, you have it in you, like the kind of a trait in the way that you would normally look at things. But as you grow, as life happens, as you have experiences, you may respond differently to the way that you see that way. So you may mature in it, is what I think is what she's getting at. And I agree with that.
I like that. I want to play. I didn't quite lock into your differentiation of perspective and perception. So let me play with it this way. I was thinking about this the other day. So going down from my house into town, we go through this little mountain pass, and it's a east-west running canyon, in essence. So one side's north facing, one side is south facing. The one that is north facing is full of snow. and this is like ski resorts. You know, you go to a ski resort, you go to Vail and go on I-70, which is running northeast, or I mean, sorry, east and west. And you go down I-70, and over on the Vail side, it's snow and people are skiing. On the north side. On the south side, just across the interstate, it's completely melted off, and you're over there hiking, and somebody may be hiking in shorts. You know, it's such a different world. So I'm seeing that as, okay, that's the a different perspective. So the kid who grows up over here, man, most of the time it's just, you know, it's kind of dry. Kid grows up right over here, you know, it's like a quarter mile on the other side of the mountain, and he lives in the snow most of the time. Different perspectives. Now the perception, though, would be how they interpret, you know, either way. And so you got the one who's just, and I'm going to be, you know, I'll polarize on the optimist pessimist. The one dude's a pessimist. And it's always hot over here. It's dusty over here. And then you put him on the other side. He goes, man, it's always cold over here and wet over here. Either way, you know, he's kind of irritated about it. And that's his perception, regardless of differing perspectives. Does that track with what you were?
Grass is greener. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, our father, I guess it was in 48 Days of the Work You Love. I think maybe it was in a different book. I'm so sorry. I can't remember. But anyway, he tells a story. Maybe it might've been in the book that we wrote together, actually, Wisdom Meets Passion. Anyway, he tells the story of his different, stories, the different stories or maybe perceptions of his story. Yeah. And, you know, I am born, you know, poor and on the farm and didn't have this and didn't have that and limited by this and parents this and that, all that. Or I was born on a farm. I got to be raised around nature and animals and freedom outside and blue skies and, you know, playing in the barn and making forts out of hay bales and, you know, and growing up around, you know, learning about food and all that stuff. Totally different story, different perspective, perception of the same exact thing that happened. But he perceives it, he can make a choice as to how he perceives it. Other people can make a choice as to how they perceive it simply if he had just read the story without, you know, without kind of infusing the way he felt about it. He could just tell a story. And we have a different perception about what that means. There are all kinds of stories that we hear. Someone may hear one story and think, oh my God, that's horrible. And the other person hears the story and says, oh, I'm so grateful that happened for you. Congratulations. And they just handle it different ways. I think that's based on the ever evolving perspective. Now I'm getting confused. Perspective that we have within us, which is like our internal operating system that says, you believe this, don't forget it. Everything should be attuned to that, including your perception of the way that you see the world. It's almost like your perception is the lenses and your perspective is kind of like the engine or the eyes that sees through the lenses. And I don't know that it's necessarily that important to make that distinction. The point is that our perception can change. There is a choice involved in our perception. There is an evolution due to experiences happening to us, and it can evolve, we can mature, and so on. So it is somewhat malleable. It's going to change as we change.
I think that's an important point of why I care about this topic, though, because if we do look at, so, you know, the objective reality happens and we then have a way that we perceive that, but that's what we play with in the self-help space is, well, you write the story however you want to. And I get that, but I think what's bothered me, and that's why I was interested in Lynda-Ross's message here, is her saying, okay, but you naturally are going to perceive it initially a certain way. She did a good job. She did a job of really making the 6 different styles all sound, or all from a positive standpoint. She wasn't saying this is better or worse, or this is, you know, she didn't say some people have a positive perception style, some have a negative. She didn't say that they all have positives and negatives. You know, we all have an innate perception style, going back to your kids. So before they've even experienced life, I mean, you got twins, which makes it even more acute. You know, you got twins. So before they've even experienced life, X happens, and one automatically tends to perceive things this way, and this one automatically tends to perceive things another way, and that those are going to continue to evolve based on their desires and their exposure to circumstances in life that they don't control. They can't control, but that still, let's just come back to the innate though, before they experience stuff, that they just naturally tend to perceive things a certain way.
A part of what I was tuning into earlier when we started this is that I don't think I bought into it that much before I had kids. And like you said,
me neither. Nature versus nurture. Totally.
I know. And I have twins, so I can really see it,
Yeah.
in two totally different humans that, born 10 minutes apart, boy and girl, developing at totally different rates, obviously. It's understood that girls develop faster than boys, females faster than males, sorry. Yeah. And I can see it. Like she spoke 3 or 4 months before he did, like talking, with words. She potty trained herself without thinking about it. He was like 3 years of craziness. And so on and so on. So you see these differences even between male and female as they're growing up, but the tendencies, the perception that they have, it's loud. Like it's not hard to find the differences between the two of them. They're very different. I know that in certain circumstances, I'll literally run up to the two kids, same exact situation. Something just happened, and I'll run up and I'll pick up Zion and go, "Oh, buddy, but blah blah." Because I know Taya she's not even paying attention, doesn't care, didn't phase her, wasn't a big deal, nothing. Or vice versa. It's not just one of the. It changes depending on the circumstances, because I know they're wired a certain way. Now, as a parent, I also have an opportunity to invest in a certain direction if something looks like it's hurting that child. That's just as a parent. I think as an adult, we just have to do that on our own. They're like, is this bearing the kind of fruit in my life by constantly seeing things and responding in this way? Or should I tune this in a different direction, in a different way?
Right.
We read self-help books. We do get involved in personal development. Those are things that we're doing because we recognize a way that we are showing up in the way that we're seeing the world, let's just say, is less than optimized. So maybe it's a big overt problem. Maybe it's just we want to get better, whatever. And so we engage in these things to change, to ever so slightly, not change, but influence our perception of the world.
Yeah.
We think about things that we've done, experiences that we had, you and I, hiking mountains or things on bicycles, whatever it may be, or whatever it is, we have some experience. It's like, whoa, I'll never see the world the same way. And, we've both had lots of different kinds of experiences like that, from relationship stuff to, babies being born and coming, oh my God, I'm a father, all these moments that are so pivotal and they shape who we are. And I think that if allowed and nurtured, there is a natural maturization that can happen with your perception and the way your worldview. And we feed it. I think we're feeding it all the time, whether or not we're cognizant of it or not.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here. I mean, with self-helpful is we're consciously saying, I recognize I'm showing up in a certain way. Some aspects of that are wonderful, and other aspects are things I'd like to tune in another direction or mature or evolve in some certain way.
Yeah. And to that degree, I just want it out on the table. This is how I generally am going to naturally perceive something. Then, if I'm aware of it, now I'm able to, what you keep coming back to, I think, now I'm able to consider it and go, what's working for me? What's producing life and health and goodness, and what is not? And not to be judgmental, but that's one aspect. And the other is, I think, to have, maybe that, not to be judgmental, but to be considerate of that. And even if you go back, like I think I talked about in the show with her, the idea of a bear coming out of the woods, which is so funny. It was literally, I think, 2 days later. Oh, I think I sent you guys. Yeah.
I saw it. Yeah.
Little bear come up on the deck. Unfortunately, I was the only one there. The family wasn't even there, but the idea of, hey, here comes a bear, and I'm prone to go, kids, come on, and literally not just come to the window, like, let's go out on the deck, check it out. We've seen the bears, and well, anyways, even without justifying whatever, that's my tendency is, oh wow, and my wife is not fear, it's not negative or anything, but it's protective. I'm going, okay, well, hold on, why don't we keep the doors locked there? Dude, that is not wrong. Neither one is wrong. And that's what we tend to do. That's what interests me is we tend to judge. We tend to look at that and go, come on, and I'm going to make my case. Okay. When was the last bear attack? And they're more scared of us than they are. And I want the kids to experience it and yada, yada, yada. And she's going to go on the other side and go, well, there haven't been many, but the ones that have been are fatal. So I'm not, they both make sense. They're both legit. So if we can understand our perception styles and step back and be aware, bear, okay, hey, how can we honor each other? Let's not justify. Let's realize that the only objective reality is bear. That's it. After that, it's story we're writing. How can we do that and have grace for ourselves and the other person? And then how can we work it? Because in reality, as I'm thinking about that, thinking, you know what, we can see the bear just fine out the big window. We don't really have to go outside. And it is, that's an unnecessary danger to step outside to see it. The window's fine. We can see clearly out there. Yeah. But either way, to help maneuver and manage the situation to the benefit of all.
Yeah. Now that you're talking about it that way too, I think that we have choices. Then I know that we have choices in how we respond. I can say to anything, first of all, but specifically even to our own perception. So your perception may be, hey, let's go out there on the deck and dance with the bear. That seems like a cool idea. And that's fine, in your mind. However, due to other information around you and even the perspective of Terry, your wife, then there's a choice for you to then adapt and say, actually, even though my first tendency would be to just go out there and do, dance with the bear, I do recognize, because I have other information, it's better for my family probably if we don't take that risk, because it's not really that necessary and it's not much different than just looking out the window. So it's a risk that's not really worth it, even though that would be my normal perception or tendency to go that direction. So I think that's part of the evolution and what Lynda-Ross was talking about, in that we have I'm using my words there, I guess, but we have a choice as to how we respond to our innate perspective, perception, whatever it is. And we have also the ability to intentionally influence it along the way, which again, I think is the process of what we call self-help, self-develop, personal development, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking on to what you said, that maybe the cutoff for me of like, okay, whatever happens, you just decide what story you're going to write. It just doesn't feel that easy for me. And that's where my interest was. You don't just flippantly, because you have a natural wired in, and without understanding, I think that's what I'm feeling here. Without understanding my natural perception style, then I'm so much more limited in how I can exercise choice to alter it, as you said, to respond differently, to be aware of it.
Absolutely. That's why we end up going and doing all these personality tests, because of that. We're trying to do that. We're saying, if I'm aware of how I'm designed, however, whatever assessment test, whatever we might take, I think the reason we're taking it, the motivation behind that, what drives us, if you will, is that we want to know more about ourselves. We want to understand, is this really like a thing that I'm showing up? Is this like a patterned thing that other people have? Or is this just some wild hair of my life? Is this just was I dropped in my head? Was I, or am I some godlike figure? Whatever it is, whatever side of the spectrum you're on, and you're wondering, is this just me, or is this quote unquote normal? I think is what we say. But to understand, actually, it's very indicative of a particular archetype of whatever assessment we're taking. An 8 in my case, in the Enneagram. And people can go, oh, so anyone that knows the Enneagram, I can walk into any of my friends and say, I'm an 8. And they go, got it. I know about 80% of you already.
Yeah.
And The reason I know that is because at some point in my life, I found out about the Enneagram and I found out that I could understand a little bit more about how I'm created. Why wouldn't I do that? So
Oh,
I
yeah.
can, when I get that urge or that tendency to respond in a certain way, and maybe before I thought, oh, that's a evil or bad or whatever negative thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm thinking this or doing that. At some point, I can kind of understand through the understanding of the assessments. Actually, I'm sort of programmed to lean a little bit in that direction. That sounds
Yeah.
reasonable that I would come up with that conclusion. Fine. I'm not evil. That's just what I thought at the time, and I don't think it now. I'm good. Oh my God, I just made it out. It's like I'm finding ways to like, the more I get to understand who I am and how I'm created, it's like, oh, I'm not stuck in that little trap where I was before thinking whatever I thought that was negative. It's like, no, I actually understand this is just part of who I am. And a lot of people have a lot of these tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
To some degree, I think the more I've explored that, the more I've explored myself internally in that self contemplation, and then the more that I've done that in community with others, the more I've realized how similar we actually all are, even though we think we're so vastly different. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't believe that so much anymore. I think that I know scientifically and otherwise that we are innately interconnected. I also recognize that now that there are a lot of like isms and personalities and archetypes and things that are very similar that we kind of come in with. And then we all have choices as to how we respond to that. We have choices as to how we influence that. That's the nurture part. We have choices in all of this stuff, including how we feel about how we see something. You know, I
Yeah.
might look at something and say, I feel this way about it. No, I feel bad about that. And so on. We have choices all along the way.
Well,
So I don't know. I think it's an ever
you,
evolving scenario.
well, but I like the concept. You got me thinking about it, talking about kids' Legos. You know, that if we give 5 kids, you know, a bag of Legos that all has the possibility of some kind of a vehicle that can take them from point A to point Z, you know, but it's not, it's different parts that we're all trying to figure out what our parts are. And I think we're all capable of a lot of stuff. We're all capable of driving cross country, but you got certain parts and you may end up with, you know, slick tires for like a Porsche. And over here, I want that, but I got knobby tires. It just is.
Yeah.
So adapt to that, you know, that's what I want to do, figure out what I got. And then I can adapt to go, well, okay, really, you know, you can go fast but you're confined to roads, dude. Sorry. I'm going to use my knobbies and I can go over mountains, you know, and understanding and honoring that. But then, you know, also to your point too, figuring out, well, maybe I do want some other parts or whatever. I'm going to have to do some work, you know, for that. Talking about the personality profiles, one of the things that sticks out to me a little bit, I'm going to try to see if I'm thinking about this right, is a lot of them, you talked about the disc profile, and it's kind of like how we respond to things. You know, how we respond. You know, you're going to be aggressive or type A, or you're going to be, you know, compliant, or you're going to be whatever, detail oriented. It's an outward thing. And this perception style to me was almost more of kind of like, this is how we take things in. This is how I receive. So before I even respond, before I act as a D or a C or a Enneagram as a 1 or a 3 or whatever, man, it starts with, I wake up, my eyes open, and life's happening, and I'm going to naturally receive things this way. I'm going to receive the light coming in or the light not coming in. I'm going to receive the sunny day or the rainy day. I'm going to receive it. I'm going to tend to receive it this way. This is how I just, again, back to Lynda-Ross's thing, I'm going to naturally, inherently, she would say, I'm going to inherently perceive things this way. If I'm aware of it, then I can decide, what do I want to do with that perception? Do I want to accept it? Do I want to alter it? Do I want to seek more information? Do I want to ask questions? Do I want to evolve? Do I want to, you know, kind of like the Legos thing. Do I want to, well, if that's the case, you know, I might want to bring a backpack today. I might want to do this. I mean, you know, understanding that as opposed to, again, judging it as right or wrong necessarily. As I cited this to you, you saying it just is. You got to, that just is your tendency. What do you want to do with it now? Are you good with that natural perception? You might say, yeah, I am. This is what I see. This is how I perceive. Things are good. But if I don't, now what's happening? Now what do I do with that? If I perceive X with anxiety that maybe somebody else is not at all, what do I want to do with that? Is that okay? Does that seem right? Does it seem relevant? To like that. Hey, it's a kind of the snake stick thing, the therapeutic snake stick. You're going along a trail and you see something and you automatically, do you see a snake or a stick? And I think we've judged that wrong. Oh, everybody should see it as a stick. Well, not if it's a snake. You shouldn't. That would be me. That would be not my natural perception style. Is I'm just going to choose, because I don't want the fear. I don't want the whatever. I'm going to choose that it's a stick. Well, I've got a lot of instances in my life where I would have been a lot better to know that there's an object. I'm going to tend to see it as a stick. Why don't we slow down a little bit and just see, instead of just going pall mall, going after it and hoping that I'm right? Because if I'm not, I'm going to get bit. And this is funny because I'm thinking about this. We've got, for some reason, I don't know if it's an epic proportion, but more than normal, rattlesnakes in Colorado, in certain areas. And I wouldn't have thought much about it, except we're riding the other day and literally just fat butt rattlesnake on the side of the road that had been run over. But there it was. Oh, well, crap. I don't want to be out on a trail and bit by something like that, and you're supposed to, we went through this the other day. Like, what do? You're supposed to slow everything down. Well, dude, if I'm 10 miles out, what am I going to do? Just sit there and get my heart rate down and just sit there. If I'm by myself, how do I get out? So we were talking about that. So it's legit, but I like that concept of going, okay, if we know our perception style, it gives us, again, the ability to, or what I said, to receive. This is how I'm going to naturally receive things, perception style. What do I want to do with that? Which I can't unless I'm aware of it, which again is why we had Lynda-Ross on the show.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's kind of this personal development, journey that we're on. It's a lot about just becoming cognizant of the things that are happening within us, the way that we're designed, the way that we respond. Is that a way that I want to respond? Do I want to give attention to that, to train myself in another direction, or even just a little bit off of that direction or something? Do I want a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit less of this? And just speaking personally, I think, as you know, I was built with like a badger inside me in terms of aggression, and like fight and all that stuff. It's just innately in me. I don't know why. I don't know where that came from necessarily, but it has always been there. And everything that I do and have experienced and everything, that's always there, present somewhere. Now, it may be overtly out there and recognizable by other people around me, in more of an obvious way, or it may be stewing within me and it's recognizable in the energetic level, or, and this is where I like to think that I've arrived, it's not noticeable because it welled up within me. I faced it and I breathed it out and I came back to the table without the aggression. It was my tendency, but because I've created practices around it, it doesn't have to own me anymore.
Yeah.
To some degree, I feel like that's almost like breaking generational curses and things like that when it comes to something like anger and aggression and something negative in that way. There are other things like my tendency towards awe. And again, I'm using myself as an example. I always do that because it's something I can just own. I'm not talking about somebody else. My tendency towards awe and reverence and things like that. And I think, oh man, both of our parents are pretty great with that. I think, I just bought both of them, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. Oh my God, a spectacular book on creativity and all. Anyway, I got it for them both, their own books, so they can mark them up or whatever. And they were both excited about that and they're already into them. They're big on wonder and awe and like, go, suck in the roses and, take in the clouds and like all the stuff. And that's something that's innate within me. And that's something that I've wanted to tune into more rather than try to correct or however you want to say it, rather than try to change it in any way. So those are two things that are innately within me. One, I wanted to
Right.
give more attention and carry forward further so that my children experience that and they carry it forward maybe. That's the awe and the reverence and the appreciation of sacred things and things like, again, both of our parents, I think, are very tuned into that. Dad more now probably than ever. Um, and I think that's something that's innate within me. I'm grateful for that. That anger and aggression and whatever, I don't know where that came from. I've never experienced that in either one of our parents that much. But I had that so much in me for whatever reasons. And it's been something that I've really had to dance with, something that I felt ashamed about before, something that I felt wrong about before. And now it's something that I'm like, oh, that's energy. That's power, baby. I can use that. And I can tune that and wield it in a way that I want to. It doesn't have to own me anymore. One thing I did learn, by the way, now that we're in an anger management discussion, is that I don't want to squelch that. Trying to push that down and squelch it just made me angrier and more volatile. That was not, I wanted to take that energy and get it out of me, get it away. Instead, now I've learned how to take that energy and say, oh, I can use that. It's a lot of energy. I don't want to shoot that out the back door. I want to use that. I'm going to ride that wave. So I changed that. My idea is to transmute it into love, is the poetic version of it.
I love that. So the book sitting behind me, Men's Work, Connor Beaton. Yeah. So I had him, we haven't published it yet, but I had him on a show just before coming on with you. I was on his show, or we did the recording for his show, literally talked about the aspect. Now he's talking about men. That's his platform. And asked me about that, what I thought about those. I know we're in such a volatile time with some of these words and stuff, but the kind of the masculine aspect, and what do you do with that? And I'm a proponent of, we talked about that, of doing something with it. If we don't do something with that energy, in essence, I don't see it working out. If so, we're going to voyeuristically try to get it out, and we're going to do things, we're going to do porn, or we're going to do drugs, or we're going to do gambling, or we're going to do whatever. I'm with you. I like to let it rip. Now I'm going to go do it on a bike or on a trail, or, like you with boxing or whatever. And
just right after this, I'm going to go hit the bag. That's where I get it out. Yeah. But that's not, it's also, I want to be clear too, that it's not always just a ventilation shaft. It's not just like something where I have to go out and like hit the bag, or I'm going to be a bad dad to my kids or something. That's something that I do. Hitting the bag like that, obviously a big major part is just because it's exercise that I enjoy, and there's some self-defense and things like that, sure, but ultimately it's an expression that fits my inner DNA. That's like, I was probably a boxer in in another life. Like I have something in me in that feels good to let my, to have a valve to just get kind of aggression and things like that out. Could be anything. And I can do that on a mountain bike too. But then the other side of what I was talking about though, is that I can take that energy and maybe transmute it and turn it into something entirely different. I've found, for instance, with my kids, in a situation where something wells up in me and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm angry. And I'll take that energy and say, like, how could I pour all of that into just, Zion's done something to just like push me to my outer limits. And he's expecting, like a outburst of some kind or whatever. And I say, I'm going to take all this energy, little man, I'm going to put it into hugging you. I'm going to give you a big hug. I'm going to say, I love you. And I'm going to see if I can work myself into a laugh. I'm going to see if and all of that was energy that I was just transmuting into something else. And I didn't have to go hit the bag, because that would have just been like it's like the release thing on the Instant Pot, you just let it out.
Yeah.
Instead, I wanted to use it for something productive. And that's a little bit of a different dance.
Well, I'm back. I'm still, or not still, but I'm on with you on, it doesn't have to own me. That's what we're talking about. This is my
part of it, honestly. That's the freedom part. Yeah.
Well, and if you go again with Lynda-Ross's premise that you have an inherent perception style, you're saying, yes, okay, let's just accept that for the sake of this discussion. Okay. and it doesn't have to own me. So I'm going to take it. And what I heard you saying in essence is, okay, this is this is my perception style. Is it serving me? How's it serving me? How is
Yeah.
it serving others? How is it serving the situation? Because if you have that and something, where you and I are walking along the street and we got our kids, New York City late at night. I don't know why we'd be out there with our kids, but let's just say that we're there. And there's, we're going to get mugged or something like that. And my first thought is, huddle the kids, grab protection, or go try to get them gone. And yours is to go confront the muggers and do that. Those could both serve very well. That could be a great, combo. But being aware of that, of that propensity, and go, okay, what would serve best right now? Would it serve? Maybe we can't get out. Maybe there's nowhere to go. So it's a good thing that you've got some aggression, in you, and we use that. Or maybe there's shops to either side that are open, and let's go with mine. And it's to take them run and, get behind a door and with other people and stuff. But what is it going to serve, and being aware of that? That's what I'm wanting to learn from this, to say, this is my perception style. So when the objective reality happens, I know right away, I'm programmed to know, oh, I'm going to do this. Cause I'm thinking about it too, like with not judging it. Can we not judge it? That's what I feel like we tend to do. And that's what I'm trying to break myself from, not judging my own perception style, not judging yours, not judging my wife, my kids, my whatever, but just being aware. Because I know that with things just like the snake stick type thing, I tend to be a minimizer of things that sometimes don't need to be minimized. Somebody's feelings, a danger, a risk, or whatever. Now, in some places, again, it's, if we say it's not bad, it just is, it's a thing. So in this instance, is my natural minimizing. Let me realize that I'm doing that, and is that going to serve me well? And in this instance, maybe so. Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to minimize. Somebody, cut me off in traffic, flip me off, road rage, whatever. Why don't I just minimize that, pull off, at a rest area, get rid of them, whatever. That's probably pretty good, as opposed to maximizing. Let's not do that. But over here, when it's somebody's emotion and a kid is emotionally traumatized or something, probably not a good place to minimize, which I've done, and right. Where I might look at my wife is she tends to, maximize things. That's a good place to do that and really join that kid and attach to them and be compassionate and empathetic and whatnot. And to get these on the table and figure, I like that. It doesn't have to own me, but it doesn't have to own me. Here's my perception style, inherent. It doesn't have to own me. I'm going to be aware of it so I can, in that situation, in that objective reality, what serves me, others, a situation best. That feels like the trifecta right there.
I agree. Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking about the old, we didn't even watch it when we were kids, but G.I. Joe or whatever, they would say knowing is half the battle. I'm like, hey, that's a pretty wise thing to say. I agree. It is just what cognizance, I think, is what I would say. Just being aware of the things that are innately in me. And it's interesting. You and I, you see a stick every time, and on the trail, and think, oh, I should probably tune in the fact that sometimes that might be a snake. So I'll tune that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the trail. I see a snake every time, and like 3 other threats, And for me, I've had to let a lot of that go, and more of my security mindset and background and things like that, and just be outside and be happy to see a stick and be grateful and that, and maybe tune that back. So we both have different tendencies, and you and I are both tuning to kind of come into this range together, like where one's tuning up, one's tuning down, whatever it is, because we realize that in that tuning, we might have a little bit of a better experience in our life that we want more, that serves us better. Is it serving you? And I think that you asked that question earlier. I think it's important. One of the other things, I took notes earlier during the first podcast, and one of the things that Lynda-Ross was saying was that she said you build your life around what you really feel rather than what you feel is missing, or what others maybe think that you should achieve.
Yeah.
And I love that she brought that up. That's again a choice, that's a pivot point there, is to say, is this do I perceive it as right or wrong, good or bad, whatever. Do I feel like, something's missing that I need to replace? Or do I feel like this is too much? I spend a lot of my time in the presence of a therapist saying, I'm constantly getting the feedback from everyone around me that I'm too much. And it was really hurtful for me at the time or whatever. And I also remember discovering in that most of that was just coming from me. I felt like others perceived me as too much, as were they weren't really thinking about that at all. So I had this perception that I had to change things and so on. Anyway, fast forward 3 years of therapy, and I feel like this has a lot to do with my business role as a strategist as well. But I think, and as an activist, I think it's extremely important as a human, a strategist, and an activist, and anything else probably, to know your role.
Yeah.
Like what is the thing that you're really adept at doing, or intrinsically capable of doing, or whatever.
Totally.
Like, do that, lean into that. And there's lots of exceptions to all the things, but let's just have a general path here on this one and just say that when you have some of those innate things, or tune into some of the things that are innate within you, know your role. I've just been having a conversation with another organization that I'm working with, and saying, look, I think I've gotten out of the line of my role.
Yeah.
It's another situation where I just feel like what happened is I got put into this top dog position there, for certain reasons of, leadership and things like that. I was like, but all the other facets of this position are not my best role. I'm not serving you the best that I can. There was another thing I was doing recently where I felt like, wait a minute, I'm just doing this because I ended up here. It's not my best role. And when you get really cognizant of that, and you just constantly like, wait a minute, I'm out of my role here. And you can just self-correct and say, nope, I'm going to do the thing that's in my role. I have found more flow from that than about anything lately. It's just like knowing my role and sticking to it, and then making healthy boundaries, as Nedra 12 Glover would talk.
I totally. I'll quote Lynda-Ross's statement, or at least what was in her book. The concept that one style will change from situation to situation is a cop-out and allows us to avoid facing the concept of limitations. The concept there are things that we will never do well. So I'm looking at that at perception styles. I was trying to come up with a good analogy, and I don't know if I've got one, but just knowing if I am a natural, protective type person, maybe that would lend well towards, being a cop or something like that. Yeah. I'm not. That's a good one. I am not protection. I mean, obviously, as a dad and husband and whatever, I mean, I've got that in me, but it's just not my first go-to. With the kids going out, my first thing isn't their safety and protection necessarily. And I know other guys who it is totally. And that's great, but that may dictate, what kind of parent you're going to be and what kind of vocation. I love that you brought that up. What kind of vocation that you go in that's going to be a fit, and not, as opposed to saying that this crap that we do in this industry of self-help and personal development of going, oh, you can do and be anything. And Lynda-Ross, I felt like this for a long time, but Lynda-Ross, said that you can try, I guess, but you're going to suck at something. Something's going to be
you might be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is,
totally.
I think, most often the case. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be a doctor like my grandfather was, or my dad, or whatever. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're not even geared in that direction. Like, that is not your profile, man. You're going to be miserable, and people stay there sometimes forever. That's tough.
No, but it's huge. So again, I want, well, we can do this with our kids. Help them figure out what their perception style is, just like we do with the other personality profiles and whatever, and go, gosh, if this is the way you tend to perceive life in these certain instances, that's probably going to serve you well down these pathways, as an artist, an entrepreneur, an accountant, or whatever. And, oh gosh, now that I'm seeing your perception style, X is probably going to be a bad choice for you. Now, she questioned your ability to even master something, but let's say that you can go forward and you can master something, but as you said, you're going to be miserable in it, which we have a lot of people that, I mean, you mentioned, or I don't know if you did did you mention doctors?
Yeah.
Man, we have a lot of folks that go into those types of profession for, to help people or for the prestige or for the money or whatever. I mean, so any of those big
or
professions
in a family. Yeah.
Sure. Doctor, lawyer, whatever. And they do it. And maybe they learn how to be a brain surgeon and they can do the mechanics very well. Hate it.
Yeah.
And they're totally miserable. And those are ones where they tend to invest so much in it that they seldom leave. They just put in their time, make a bunch of money until they can get the heck out, which, is just a terrible testimony. But yeah, I again, coming back to this perception style aspect of, it's why it excited me. That's why, and I knew you would resonate with it of going, but I love what you brought into it. Okay. This is, if we take her research, your perception style is inherent. It in and of itself may not change a whole lot, but it doesn't have to own you. And you learn to, well, we didn't use this word. I liked it though. We learn to wield it. We learn to wield it well, which I would think is, as with everything, we go with it. So man, that's good. Thanks for bringing that light to me. I'll play with that in my wrap up some. But yeah, I knew you dig it. Such a blast to have these discussions with you, brother. Thanks.
Thanks, man. You too. I enjoyed it.
Well, again, Lynda-Ross Vega and co-author Gary Jordan, their book is Unlock the Power of Your Perception. And you can take a free perception style assessment. I took it. You can go to yourtalentadvantage.com. In the next episode, I'm going to cover the highlights of this series on perception style and what I'm working to learn and apply to my own life. Friends, thank you for tuning into Self-Helpful, where I curate the sea of new personal development materials and help you integrate wisdom into your life, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others.